Okay, welcome to this very special session, Putting a Region on the Map, Belladrum Tartan Heart Festival, Past, Present and Future. My name's Alex Smith and I project manage XpoNorth. And as the festival gets set to make a very welcome return this summer, we're delighted to be joined by festival founder Joe Gibbs and Kilimanjaro Live CEO Stuart Galbraith to hopefully take quite a candid look back over how the festival got started and discuss this year's edition and take a look towards the future. And with that, gents, I'm just going to ask you both if you would kindly just introduce yourself to the XpoNorth audience, and I'll start with you, Joe.
Hi, Joe Gibbs. I was the founder of the festival, and I ran it until 2019. Although actually it was taken over by Kilimanjaro from 2017, now it still takes place on my farm.
Fantastic.
And I'm Stuart Galbraith. I'm the CEO of Kilimanjaro Group, and we, as Joe said, are now responsible for Belladrum, both legally and financially, but still working very closely with Joe, as it happens to take place in his back garden every year.
Thanks so much. I guess given the title, Joe, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to start with you. And I wonder if I can take you back to the start, how the festival came into existence. Can you maybe talk us through those early editions and I guess what motivated you to start a music festival on your estate?
Yes, well, it was almost certainly it was a case of fools walk in where angels fear to tread. As it probably is with many people who haven't got a record of being in the music industry and start a festival. And I got lucky in the end. But we started it for a number of reasons. One was we had the what is now the main stage, the setting of the main stage, beautiful Italianate gardens going down to a big apron at the bottom, which were in a state of supreme disrepair, needed to be repaired if they weren't going to fall to pieces forever, but needed a reason for doing so. And hey, why not have a festival? And I'd also spent quite a lot of my youth going to festivals and enjoying them in all the usual ways, thinking at the time it must be misspent youth, but as it turned out, perhaps it wasn't such a bad thing to do after all. And there wasn't a festival in the Highlands. So there was only really Tea in the Park at that time in Scotland. And so that seemed to be a great opportunity. And so I got hold of a local guy called Rob Ellin, who was able to book bands, knew about booking bands, which I knew nothing about at all. And I did all the kind of practical side of it, of putting the site together, and he booked the bands for our first festival, which in 2004 featured Jerry Lee Lewis's sister, Linda Gale Lewis, as our headliner.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Joe. I wonder, kind of staying on that theme, I guess, Joe, for our audience here, I wonder if you could maybe talk us through some of the initial challenges, the successes. I mean, do you remember the year where you felt, you're kind of onto something quite special here?
Yeah, there were kind of two types of special. It always felt special from the point of view of audience and participation and atmosphere and everything like that. We always went for a family festival, because I'd been to Glastonbury in '79 when Arabella Churchill first introduced the kids side to Glastonbury, and it had a remarkable effect on what could have been and had been before that quite a crusty event, and it had a very different atmosphere. You know, the kids brought they brought a sort of softness to it all, and so from the very start we decided we'd be family. And we always wanted that kind of Woodstock, Glasgow vibe, but who doesn't? And so from the beginning, we had a lovely audience, and Highlanders are always made the most marvelous audience, and audience has been pretty much from the beginning. I suppose it probably started off about 100% Highland, and it's now about, I would think, Stuart will know, but 60-70% Highland still. And Highlanders certainly know how to party, and it was great fun from that point of view. Less fun was the jumping in the deep end of health and safety and all that side of things, having never really had to deal with anything like that, and finding myself amazed at the number of railings that had to be put up to stop people falling over precipices and killing themselves in the process. And the financial aspect, which was for the first 5 years ruinous, to be absolutely candid. It the festival lost money hand over fist for the first 5 years, and it took quite an act of faith to continue doing it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joe. I guess, Stuart, maybe...
Sorry, can I just add to that? That what swung it around, it might be interesting from an industry perspective, was some advice from Highlands and Islands Enterprise, HIDB as it was then, who said, if you're going to make this thing work, and they had been supporting us very, very well, if you're going to make this thing work, you've got to spend 20% of your turnover on marketing, and which we hadn't been doing until then. Now that paradigm, I think, has changed enormously in recent years because of social media and the internet generally, which didn't really exist in 2004 to the extent that it does now. And I think things would be very different, in fact, if we were starting it in the current media environment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Stuart, I guess moving to you from a slightly different perspective, I mean, could you maybe break down your history with the Belladrum Tartan Heart Festival leading up to, I guess, the full acquisition in 2017?
Yes. Well, it came about through one of our partners here at Kili, Steve Tilley. And I don't know how Steve got Joe's number or vice versa. But Steve was approached by Joe, or we approached Joe. I think probably Joe approached Steve more likely in 2011 to start helping book headliners. As Joe said, after the first few years, the bills were getting bigger. The numbers were, or the fees for headliners would have been increasing significantly, and there comes a point where you really need to be speaking to those agents 50 weeks a year rather than just ringing up and saying, I've got one project. So Steve started booking the headliners, and I think the first year, as you said, would have been 2011, where Deacon Blue and Emily Sande, I think, were the headliners back then. And then from there on in, not only did we help book the headliners, but we came to the festival every year, some years en masse, with mass family gatherings. Indeed, I remember camping in Joe's garden one year with, and it absolutely pissed down with rain on the Saturday night, to the point where we then all went into Inverness that Friday morning to buy better tents and warmer sleeping bags. But so no, we just grew to love the festival. It didn't become it grew out of just a task to book headliners into, wow, this is fantastic, and it's the highlight of our not only company year but also family year as well. And so we grew to grow and love it. And then when Joe started to make noises about we could potentially get further and wider involved, then we leapt at the chances.
Fantastic. And Joe, I guess, how important was that strategic partnership with maybe, I guess, a larger booking mechanism with more buying power in the marketplace, better connections? How critical was that to the scaling up of the festival, that in terms of how it looks today?
Oh, massively important. I mean, as Stuart says, booking there comes a level at which booking becomes a profession rather than a pastime. And, we badly needed, and actually, funny enough, it was through my partnership with other people in Rockness that we ultimately met Steve Tilley and sort of came under the Kili banner. But you know, it's one of the sort of strange things. You think as a promoter that you're doing artists a favor by offering them huge sums of money, but you don't take into account very often that you know, they worry about things like your credibility as an event and whether you're actually going to happen or not that year and all those sort of things. So you need sort of the gravitas of a serious organization behind you like Kili, who've got the reputation to bring in those sort of bookings that you need to keep growing the event and to keep satisfying an ever more optimistic audience.
Mm. You're going to say the reputation of being very serious. They're a very serious organization.
Yeah. Well, that's not serious as in business. Serious, yeah.
I guess to feed it, to touch upon, I guess, what both of you have made reference to, you know, I've a relatively long history with the event myself. We've produced stages there and we've collaborated on many things over the years, Joe, and it's, I guess both of you touched on this idea of that unique aesthetic that Belladrum has, that provenance that intrinsically kind of links it to the regional community more widely. And I guess this is a difficult question, but I guess what do you think that is? Joe, I'll put it to you first. What do you think it is about the festival happening on the estate there that makes kind of consumers just really warm to it as such an important event for festival goers? What can you put your finger on what that is?
Well, it's a sort of I mean, without wanting to get too mystical about it, the Belladrum has got, and I you know, things like feng shui and ley lines, all those sort of things, I don't really understand them, but there is definitely something about the area, the estate, the place, the farm that smiles. And, you know, people come and live here and they never leave, you know, tenants and people rent houses, they stay forever and ever. It's got a very happy atmosphere to it naturally. And so, and it's a very beautiful place too. So, you know, I think that helps. Having staved off various efforts to have wind farms locally, you know, one becomes more aware of that, how fragile that beauty is. But I think that also the sort of, do you mean by aesthetic the sort of general look of the event, the art,
it's very experiential.
Yeah,
but one of the things that I would say, I guess, being slightly outside it, is that, you know, it genuinely feels like a family-friendly destination. I've always taken my kids there and things, and they've also had a great time. I know most festivals claim to have that dynamic to what they do, and then you arrive on site and it's, you know, it's very, very rarely is that the case. But Belladrum always feels very pleasant, I guess, to be around. It's a great lineup and everything like that, but it has that kind of charm about it. You know, it's one of these things I don't think could happen anywhere else, let alone the name. You know,
it's a kind of it's a difficult balance between being rigorous in your systems that protect vulnerable people from anything nasty happening at an event, but appearing to be happy and relaxed, and not those systems not being too evident, you know. So it's always, we've always had very much an eye towards you know, the pastoral care of the people who are coming to the festival, but without wanting it to be too done in your face, you know. And I also think actually a lot of it's down to the people who work for Belladrum. You know, we've always had a fantastic crew, a lot of ladies in it, a lot of girls in it, and they've always had at the forefront of their minds the happiness, the well-being of the people who come to it, and they've always done everything they can to promote that.
Indeed. And I guess, Stuart, from your perspective, it'd be critically important to try and retain everything that Joe just mentioned there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo everything that Joe has said. Belladrum is a special place, but also the festival isn't just the people that run it; it's the people that come to it. And certainly, I mean, when we were looking at Belladrum and trying to work out what its uniqueness was, And then the obvious thing is the obvious exercise will be, well, how can we repeat that? Where could we repeat that? And I think there's another element to it, which is that Belladrum is always and has always been a festival that takes place in the Highlands for Highlanders, but also run by Highlanders. And my dad's from Peeble, so I fall outside of that geographically. But I think the postcode analysis that we now have is still higher than Joe, as you say. It's the vast majority of people, and I mean 85%, are within 2 hours drive of Inverness. And so while we do now get customers from Glasgow and Edinburgh, they're very, very much in the minority, a tiny minority. And certainly wandering around the site, it's very difficult to hear an English accent anywhere, which is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I think it is that uniqueness that actually makes up what Bella is, because, as I said, we were, for instance, looking at whether we could create a Welsh equivalent, and the answer is you can't. There is no Welsh equivalent to the Danglebury. There is no Welsh equivalent to Tomatin Brewery, and the Welsh just don't embrace while they embrace their nationality, there isn't that sort of fervor. There is no equivalent to the kilt in Wales, or indeed anywhere else in the world. Let's face it. So I think it's and for us in the conversations that we had with Joe leading up to trying to get our deal done, it was on one very, very clear understanding is that Belladrum was not broken. In fact, it was far broken, and it didn't need fixing in any way, shape, or form. So it was crucially important to us that it still stayed as a festival run for Highlanders by Highlanders. And I think, largely speaking, we've been able to achieve that. And so although our financial transaction happened in 2017, Joe stayed very much involved in 18 and 19. And then obviously, unfortunately, we weren't able to run in 20 or 21. But 95% of the team that run Belladrum have worked there for years. And it's only the little bits that sort of feed in from London that sit in the background that are not from a long-standing relationship with Bella.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's really nice to see Kili keeping on, and I know you always said you would, Stuart, but it's lovely to see the core team from Bella who've been involved with it pretty much since the beginning, since the first year. A lot of these people started off very young working in it and have grown with the event and now actually export their skills, to other events around Britain. They've become extremely good at their jobs. But it's lovely to see them still very much at the heart of Bella.
Absolutely. And we now have it's only a small office, but we have a 12-month-a-year office based in Inverness, and 4 people work from that. And those 4 people run Bella. We just keep an eye on it.
And you kind of touched upon this, Stuart, and the last couple of years obviously been incredibly difficult for the live sector. So you must be really, really looking forward to producing a kind of full capacity event this summer.
Yeah, yes, we are, and indeed, I was actually looking at the lineups over the years, and on our website, for some reason, our 2019 lineup was missing, and so that's going to get changed in the next day or so. But just looking at that lineup of Jess Glynn, Church's Elbow, Lewis Capaldi, it just seems so long ago. We were there, and we were there all weekend, and we had a brilliant time. But it almost feels though it was 5 or 6 years ago. But the and it's not too strong a word to use. The devastation for the team of not being able to run in, first of all, 2020 was extreme, but then to make that agonizing decision that we had to make for 2021, which none of us wanted to do, We wanted to run in 2021, but I think with hindsight, it was the right thing to do, because the other thing that we're very, very mindful of, and we can get a very good indication of this and very clear message, because all of the staff work in and around Inverness, is to listen to what the customer and the area are saying. And as much as we could have just pushed on with 2021, it wouldn't have been the right thing to do. It wasn't what the Highlands wanted, and it wasn't what our customers wanted. And so, although it was not only an agonizing decision, but a really expensive decision as well, we were within several weeks of announcing the postponement for 2021, we knew we'd made the right choice. In fact, within days, hours, in fact, now in this day of social media. And we were never going to please everybody, but certainly looking at the reaction that we got on Facebook and the other channels, the vast majority were, you've made the right decision. We're gutted that you're not running, but it was just the wrong thing to do. I mean, and that was a difficult decision to make from London, because in London, if you remember back in June, July, August last year, things were fine. We were running concerts down here. It wasn't a problem at all. But Scotland was 4 weeks behind where London was, and the Highlands are 2 or 3 weeks behind where Edinburgh is, in terms of as we have rolled into and out of this pandemic. And so it was absolutely the right thing for us to listen to the guys and ladies, people that run the festival, and they made absolutely the right decision. So.
Yeah, and indeed, and I guess staying on that topic, slightly, Stuart, as well. I mean, there's lots of good channels at the minute talking about colossal price hikes, and the AIF just estimated as much as a 30% increase across kind of operations and infrastructure. I mean, what do you think are maybe some of the most pressing challenges facing the live sector and Belladrum, I guess, as we transition fully out of COVID? What do you think over the next few years are going to be some of the kind of most pressing things that the sector is going to face?
Well, I mean, without just dwelling on finances, but starting with finances, we sold the tickets for the Belladrum Festival that's going to take place in 2022. We sold the tickets for that in August, September 2019. It's 3 years from the date of selling most of those tickets to the date that the festival is going to play. And not only have there been 2 years of inflation or 3 years of inflation, as you've been reading, it not just about festivals, but also life generally, some things have gone through the roof when it comes to costing. So, I mean, for instance, our fuel bill for the festival will be double what it was in 2019. And then specifically, there are many, many shortages within our sector at the moment, because so many people had to leave to get a living elsewhere, whether it be riggers or truck drivers or stage crew or stage builders, whatever. And then you then add to that, you've got lots of events that are postponed from 2020 and events that are postponed from 2021. And you've got all the normal portfolio for 2022. So you've got 3 years worth of projects all happening in 1 year. And so our budget has just been decimated. And to be honest, it'll be, in some respects, not only gratifying to see the festival finally play, but it'll be wonderful to actually kiss goodbye to this budget, because it's now 3 years out of date. But what it does mean, though, unfortunately, is I think we are going to have to see some price increases, which are really just reflecting some of the costs that are coming into us. And we're mitigating those wherever we can, on a long-term basis. So, for instance, we've actually this year invested in buying our stage. It became so expensive to rent that it just wasn't viable, or in our opinion, it wasn't viable. Plus, we were not sure we would actually get one. And so we bought the stage, and we're going to pay for that now over the next 5 years, which is the benefit of being able to look at it on a long-term secure future, rather than, are we going to run this year? Can we run next year? And certainly with Joe, we're also looking at other aspects of that in terms of changes that we can make to the site, better roads, better better plumbing, better irrigation, etc., where we can actually invest on a multi-year basis to try and save money and keep the ticket prices increases to a reasonable level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess kind of sticking on that a little bit, and Joe, you kind of alluded to this earlier on about I guess the supply chain, the skilled workforce, that and Belladrum's been a key part, I guess, of, you mentioned, and I know lots of people who maybe started their career in Belladrum, got those really important early experiences there, and then were able to export that skill set globally in many cases. I guess, Stuart, you being at the kind of cutting edge of this, are you experiencing that the workforce that maybe exited the live sector during the pandemic got embedded within other parts of the creative economy, or even outside of that? Are you experiencing an issue with getting those professionals, the event professionals, back on site?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're very glad that we are able to provide many local businesses a solid income from Belladrum, or we will be from 2022 onwards. But the and the festival overall has a huge impact, not just has a huge positive impact on the community in and around Inverness. I mean, Joe, I think in 2017, we haven't done one for some years because of COVID, but Joe commissioned an economic impact study in 2017. And I think even back then, it was between £4 and £6 million contribution to the local economy. Now, with everything going up and cost escalations, etc., that's conservatively got to be £6 to £8 million that we bring in to Inverness and the Highlands. And that's brilliant. And we're very proud of that. But you're absolutely right. In the course of the pandemic, so many people have had to leave the industry because there just was no work. For 2 years, there was nothing for them to do. And so you've got security men or stewards that have spent 2 years standing on testing stations or vaccination centers, or doors to supermarkets, making sure people wear face masks, etc. You've got toilet suppliers or marquee suppliers that have made a living for the last 2 years out of COVID testing and vaccinations. And many of those are not able to now come back to the industry because, to be quite frank, they've carved themselves a different career. And talking to people within the industry on a wider basis, I mean, we're now hearing examples, for instance, or I speaking to a national promoter last week. They have flown 6 riggers from South America to the UK, are paying for them to stay in hotels all summer because that's the only way they can be sure that they've got riggers for 2 major stadium tours that they're doing. And when you get to that scale of issue, then you know that it's very widespread. I also know of another show that is completely sold out. It's in Scotland. It's done. Actually, no. It's a sold out stadium show somewhere in the UK. It's 50,000 people. They are about to announce a postponement because they cannot get PA for that day. So there are huge supply chain issues, both with gear and personnel, that we're having to weather our way through this year.
What do you think, maybe, Stuart, are some of the solutions to that dilemma that you mentioned there? Because, I mean, obviously it's quite a potentially long-term and quite profound impact on the sector's agility. And what do you think? What initiatives are you seeing, or what solutions are you seeing coming on stream that might help address some of those problems that you mentioned there?
Well, certainly from our point of view, this is where Bella can benefit from being part of a larger organisation. So we also own an 80s retro festival called Let's Rock, which plays all summer in 12 different locations. And so what we will be doing is routing Let's Rock for next year, so that all of their gear will be available for us to use at Belladrum, and that will protect us on many areas of our supply chain, whether that be marquees, toilets, etc., etc. We will still need to pay to rent it, but we will be sure that we are guaranteed to get the equipment that we need, and we won't be hostage to fortune, as it were. But equally, I mean, we're mindful that costs are going up for everybody, and that's costs for customers, is costs for emergency services that provide services to Belladrum. It's for bands. There are pressures on finances on all aspects. And it won't just be Belladrum that you're going to start to see some ticket increases for, or price increases. It'll be across life generally. We're seeing that in supermarkets, we're seeing it on our gas bills, we're seeing it on our mortgages. So I'm afraid that Bella is not going to be insulated from those cost issues.
Indeed, thanks so much. And I guess moving on to this year's festival in particular, as always, an incredibly diverse lineup. Nile Rodgers and Chic, Van Morrison, Emily Sandé, host more. Who are you particularly excited about this year, Stuart? Is there anyone that really stands out for you that you're really pleased to have brought up to Belladrum?
Well, I mean, the first thing is to say it's brilliant that we've actually been able to maintain the bill, and the vast majority of the bill has carried forward. It's brilliant, obviously, that we've got Emily playing in effectively her hometown festival. She's from Aberdeen. I don't think there's a significant festival closer to Aberdeen, so I think we'll and it's the first time that she's played, as I think we said earlier on, 2011, I think it was, in fact. So she's coming back to the festival to repeat her performance from the first year that we were involved, so that's very, very gratifying. But then there's also I think, as you say, hugely diverse, and one of the key things I think with Dougie, Steve, and the rest of the team that book is the foresight to try and book things that are going to be of the moment. So even though we've had to reschedule the festival twice, somehow or other we seem to have been able to book Sam Ryder. And certainly it's going to be fascinating to see. I mean, I can't wait to see his set. Based upon his vocal performance on Spaceman. The guy's a star. He's going to be huge. So I think that'll potentially be a roadblock moment, but let's wait and see.
Indeed, yeah, amazing at the weekend, and couldn't agree more. I guess, Joe, to bring you back in, I mean, if I had to kind of press you, and I know you've got a huge range of events to draw on, but what's maybe, I'm not going to ask you for one, but maybe some moments that you would say, particularly around artists there. I mean, I think one thing as a Belladrum fan and as someone who's had involvement with the festival, I think that the lineup, I always think, it strikes that real balance between real diversity, but still feels very coherent when you're on site. A really cute way the stages are broken down to kind of maybe promote different genres. What over the years, Joe, what maybe if I asked you for your top three, this probably changes all the time, but what might be your top three artists that you've had?
Well, I mean, just to answer the question in another way, I mean, just going back to when we were booking, when I was involved in the booking of the event, and I'm sure it's still the same for Stuart and Steve and Dougie. It's an incredible sort of Rubik cube of trying to have a bit of something for everyone in there, and trying to have something that is, because we've, trying to always keeping the demographic in mind and what is better and what isn't. It's actually a very, very complex process doing that booking. You're never going to satisfy everyone all the time, but over the years, including this year, I think the event has, and I think on that hangs a lot of its success. And for me, it'd be invidious to pick out individual artists, and anyway, some of my age, they're all going to be people like Jefferson Starship, who appeared one year, and Canned Heat and people like that. But funnily enough, actually, the moment that always, every year, never fails to get me is after the final headliners have played on the Saturday night, there has been a tradition of the the Inverness British Legion pipe band coming up on stage. And by that time, they'd been playing all afternoon and possibly been somewhere near the bars too. And so it's a fairly chaotic business getting everybody onto the stage. And usually it's Kenny Smith from Torridon and Torridon, the band, are there too. And, you know, all the sound and fury and the glory has stopped, and the great stars are in their dressing rooms. And these guys, the British Legion and Kenny, are left alone with the Bella audience for what almost amounts to a kind of private celebration at the end of the festival. And he usually sings something like O Caledonia or Loch Lomond or something like that. And it's difficult to keep a dry eye at a time like that, because it is profoundly moving to see really representative of the whole Highland community singing in unison, so happy after the event. And you know, I think, you know, it's impossible for that not to be the highlight, however wonderful the artists have been during the course of the event leading up to that. Mm-hmm. I also like to say, actually, just going back to what Stuart was saying earlier, that it was such ill fortune that they took over at the time they did with COVID. But thank God they did, because had it just been me then, you know, I don't think I could have. I very much in doubt whether Belladrum would still be here, because, you know, they've had to shoulder a lot of responsibility and cost as a result of that. And you know, it can't have been easy for them. And it's amazing what they've done. And, you know, as Stuart rightly says, the ability to invest in infrastructure for the years ahead and that sort of thing, and then spread the costs over that way, is something that an outfit like Kilimanjaro has the critical mass to be able to do that, and an individual probably wouldn't. So, you know, it's in a way it was very unlucky for Kili to come in at that time, but it was very lucky for Belladrum that they came in at that time. And, you know, I'm sure everybody will be profoundly grateful that they did, and that they've managed to keep it going through those terrible years of COVID, and look forward to, you know, the next period of its existence, which I'm sure will be even more successful than to date.
Hopefully.
You very skillfully managed to avoid pinning one artist or any.
I think Arlo Guthrie, if you really want the answer.
Maybe. I wonder, Joe, on that topic as well, is there one particular artist that, as the festival was growing and developing, that you managed to secure, that you thought, great, you know, we've turned a corner here, we've moved out of, I remember those very early editions and fantastic local artists, and Belladrum still has that reputation, but I wonder if there was a moment that, or an artist that when you booked, you thought, you know, you can see the growth here.
Well, I mean, one of the sort of most extraordinary things, two extraordinary things that happened, you know, it's over the length of the festival, seeing how the trajectories of artists' careers have changed. Mm-hmm. You know, they've gone from being sort of a relatively modest upward line for most people to some people now, you know, it's just literally, it's a vertical takeoff. And it's quite easy to get kind of to get lucky and to get caught out at the same time by that. And I'm thinking of when we booked, in fact, Steve Tilley booked Ed Sheeran. And you know, it was a fantastic booking, it turned out. I mean, we listened to him, and he was just he was a sound on Spotify when we first listened to him, you know, that year. By the time he came to playing the festival on the Hothouse stage, you know, you could have got 5 times the audience that were watching him in the Hothouse stage in there, you know, and I thought that was a wonderful moment in a way, because it showed and Kili, of course, had gone on to work very extensively with Ed Sheeran since then, but it showed, you know, the how you can book these kind of sleepers and they turn into be absolutely brilliant. And Lewis Capaldi, actually, it was a similar sort of story when we booked him. So those have been moments where, I mean, you can
Gary Cinnamon recently,
and Jerry Cinnamon, absolutely, yeah. And your heart can be in your mouth, because you think, oh my God, they've become so popular. But actually, it always works in the end, and it's wonderful for the festival.
Indeed, I mean, Joe, I think you're absolutely right, and I think one of the frustrations that we've had around COVID is not being able to move on with a few bits and pieces of small change that we want to make to the festival in either 20 or 21, and so and to try and get around that massive dilemma that we have of booking something that becomes huge, and then it's, oh my God, are we going to be able to fit everybody in to see them? And I don't know, perhaps Sam Ryder will be that one this year. Let's see what happens with his single and how his trajectory goes over the summer. But one of the changes we're bringing about for this year, for the first time, is that we're taking the hothouse stage outdoors, so that we've got two stages where we can effectively put capacity audiences, rather than being worried about squeezing everybody into an over small tent, or having to jiggle things around so we can put people onto the garden stage. And as Joe said, it's very much a Rubik's Cube of booking. And if you start making changes, invariably we mess something up. So it's better for us to just say, right, this is the running order. It works well. And now we've got capability of putting somebody big here or here. So we'll see how that works this summer. So.
The other thing that we've always done too, and I know you're still doing, Stuart, is people come for they come to see obviously the bands and the artists that they know, but I think they also come because they know that they're going to take away from it a lot of things that they've been introduced to that they didn't know about before, in artist terms.
Absolutely, it's got to have that element of discovery, hasn't it? It really has.
Because I think Joe and both of you have touched on it. I think over the years, Belladrum's emerged as a really important platform for new artists, for emerging artists, and it's been great to see them move up the bill over the years. And how important all festivals really, and we've had relationships with this over the years, but they all have that dedicated platform for new talent in one way, shape, or form. But Belladrum's, I don't mean to sound wrong in any way, has always felt much more meaningful. There always felt like there has been a commitment to the development of these artists, particularly local artists. I think, Joe, there's been many who've maybe started off in the seedlings and then have gone on to bigger stages. How important has that been to the festival? If I could maybe just quickly put that to you.
I mean, one of the best examples of that is Twin Atlantic, who are not so much local, but they are Scottish, and they started off their first year many years ago now on the seedling stage, and memorably the audience had to be told to sit down, otherwise there'll be a showstop. And they went on going up through the stages to headlining and I think playing several top slots, and that was a wonderful example of somebody just becoming a festival favorite and going on all the way up through their career. And there have been plenty of other young artists that have done the same. And I mean, the other thing about Bella is that there are kind of maverick artists that come in and have slots on the bill which they probably wouldn't have at other festivals, but because they're so loved by the audience, and I'm thinking here of people like the Dangleberries and Colonel Mustard, and those sort of people, they're put way up the bill because everyone loves them so much. And that's a sort of particular feature, I think, of our event, isn't it?
Sure. I guess if I could put the same thing to you, I mean, how important is that to Belladrum to retain that reputation for discovering and promoting and giving that platform to emerging artists, particularly ones from the Highlands and Islands?
I think it's essential. I mean, but because it's part of that equation, it's part of that recipe that makes Bella so important in terms of its overall look and feel. And that is everything from the pipe band and that tear in the eye moment to Colonel Mustard and the Dangleberries. But it is also that that element of being able to discover new talent, whether it be in seedling stage or whether it be in hothouse early on in the day, etc. And I think certainly going forward, I can see that we will be booking Scottish artists that have been previously much further down the bill. And we will continue in that tradition, and we will be trying to break as many new artists from not just Scotland, but the Highlands in particular. And again, another example of that for this year would be Tamsin. So who's going to be a hugely important artist over the next few years. And for very, very obvious reasons, we're delighted to have her, Bella, and she'll be potentially a future headline.
Amazing, couldn't agree more. I guess to try and bring this full circle and round it off, looking towards the future specifically, Stuart, what do you, I know this year might be a bit about getting everything back on track, producing the festival at full capacity again, but what do you see as the future for Belladrum, if I could put that to you?
Well, in terms of I don't see it changing. I see it changing, but I also don't see it changing. Its recipe is unique. You have to make sure that we maintain that recipe and provide that the customer likes. I think what's fascinating for me on Bella is that since Joe started way back in, sorry, not that way back, but in 2004, what you've now seen is you've seen families come with very small children that have now grown up. And I think with our Bella audience, there's perhaps a period of time where they can't get to about 16, and then we're not necessarily cool enough for them. And they go off when they're 16, 17, 18, 19. But now what we're seeing is those customers now coming back with their next generation of families. So what's brilliant is to see that you've got that longevity, and what they enjoyed as small children, their children are now starting to enjoy. And so we'll carry on with that. We're very much family-facing, broad festival lineup, not just in music, but in everything else that you can do at the festival. And there's everything for something from a 3-year-old to a 90-year-old to do at Belladrum, and everything in between. So so I think the future is more of the same. We certainly won't be growing significantly. We'll tweak each year. We'll try and make things a little bit better where we feel we can. But it's I always use the expression that the Belladrum it's evolution, not revolution. So we'll just evolve bits and pieces to meet the demands of the customers and the demands of the times.
Fantastic. Sorry, Joe.
I should have said actually in the emerging talent thing that we've of course had a very fruitful partnership over the years with Go North, and very great sponsorship of the seedlings tent, and as a result of that, that has helped give many of the young bands a place to start on the music circuit, and it's been a really successful partnership there. And on the generational thing, Stuart's absolutely right. I think we've had match, definitely. We've had lots of weddings. We're told we've had hatch, with quite a few babies conceived at the event. I don't think we've actually ever had one born at the event. We've definitely got quite a few babies called Bella out there. And thank God we haven't had dispatch yet, although somebody did very rather sweetly ask for their ashes to be spread over Belladrum, which we did. But it's very much a generational thing. And as Stuart says, people go off to the uber cool festivals, but they always come back in the end, we find.
Yeah, indeed, and I guess to round the session off, I guess it's that, you know, one thing as an outside perspective, I would say, and you guys have touched upon it. I think, you know, genuinely, it's one of those events that people have in their hearts. That there's a passion for Belladrum, a genuine passion. I think the role it's played, not just in terms of giving a springboard and a platform to emerging talent from the region, but also I think additional service providers to kickstart their career in the sector. I think some of the really important people within the creative economy in the region, like Caroline and Dougie and various others that you've mentioned, have had such a strong relationship and history with the event. And it's you know, so I think there's all those peripheral elements over and above the lineup and the bill that really cut through about Belladrum and make it such an important cultural event. And you know, not just in and around Inverness, but the Highlands and Islands more broadly, and how that speaks even to the global marketplace. I think it's such an important event. And any closing thoughts, or I think we'll try and wind the session up. But I really want to thank you for your time. It's been really insightful. I really appreciate you guys being so open and honest, and all the very best for this year.
Thank you very much. We will see you in the field, and it won't rain, of course. It's always glorious weather at Bella.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, bye. Bye, Joe. Bye, Alex.
Bye.